guys, what's up? Have you ever wondered when your dog whines what they're trying to say to you? In this video, we'll be talking about the 15 different types of dog whines and what they say about your dog.
Does it work? Am I in? Hot dog! What's up, my kind canines? Eric Pasha here, and I'm cutting in today to ask a simple question. Have you ever thought to yourself, where do the principles of dog training come from? Can you train more than just dogs using these principles? And do dog trainers use mind control? Okay, maybe not the last one, but you get the idea. In this video, I'll be talking about the study of behaviorism and how you can use principles that we use in dog training to train your wife, your kids, your neighbors, anyone, really. To understand how dog training relates to human training or human behavior, we first have to start with B.F. Skinner, the father of behaviorism. Skinner was born in 1904, and he was an American psychologist and researcher whose career spanned from 1936 to 1974. He was even a professor and lecturer at Harvard University for over 20 years. Ah, yes, very nice. Skinner outlined behavior in a very straightforward way. If the consequence to a behavior is bad, there is a high chance that that action will not be repeated. But if the consequences are good, the probability of that action repeating itself becomes stronger. Skinner coined this theory the principle of reinforcement. If we flip this idea over and want to create a behavior or behavior change, for instance, Skinner created a framework for this too. If you want to increase a behavior, you reinforce it. If you want to decrease a behavior, you punish it. In fact, we can even go one step further and define how we're going to reinforce or punish a behavior. We call these ways to reinforce or punish a behavior positive and negative. By this, we don't mean good or bad, we actually mean positive as in adding something we like, or negative as in avoiding something we don't like. For example, if I do a good job at work and my boss praises me for it, hooray! That's positive reinforcement. The good work that I've done has been reinforced by the added praise. Now, on the other hand, if I know that my boss yells at me every time I walk through the front door, I can avoid getting yelled at by slipping in the back door. I've been reinforced by avoiding the front door, also known as negative reinforcement. Positive and negative punishment exist as well in much the same way, and it fills out the rest of our chart. We've got positive and negative reinforcement on the left side, and positive and negative punishment on the right side. This framework of learning Skinner called operant conditioning, and it underpins the way that we think about dog training and human behavior even today. A word of caution though. Behavior experts agree that purposefully using punishment, especially in the learning process, is unnecessary at best or downright harmful at worst. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can take his, or theirs, or theirs, or his, or even theirs. Links in the description if you'd like to learn more. Skinner himself discovered that though punishment often suppresses behavior, this suppression is temporary and has a number of other unwanted consequences. Consequences like fear, resentment, and aggression. Think about that the next time you go to scold a child for a bad report card. Skinner ran a whole host of experiments using animals and humans to develop the philosophy behind the science of behavior, and his work lives on even to this day. So from Skinner, we learn a few important points. We learn that behavior can be influenced. It can be increased, decreased, shaped, and changed. Skinner gave us a framework for this called operant conditioning. And thankfully, no one ever used his work incorrectly again. Okay, folks, that's a wrap. Pack it in. We can all go home now. Wait, what? Skinner has been one of the most misunderstood, vilified, and misinterpreted scientists of his time? Well, you don't say. I bet we got to keep going then. Nearly 2 decades after Skinner was doing some of his most influential work, Pryor had already revolutionized animal training by starting with dolphins, but soon grew to work with all types of animals, from polar bears to seals to, you guessed it, dogs. Pryor's early training experiences relied on instructions from one of Skinner's labs, relying on the science and psychology behind his work. As a behavioral biologist, Pryor saw the impact that Skinner's work could have not only on human behavior, but how it could be applied to training animals as well. In fact, Pryor is credited as a major contributor for the positive reinforcement style of training, using, yep, you guessed it, operant conditioning as the theory behind training. Out of this work came Don't Shoot the Dog, a book that takes a deep dive into animal training focused around behavioral training methods. In it, she details not only how to use behavioral training to inform your dog's training, but training the humans around you as well. We don't often think about it this way, but we can have an impact on others' behavior simply by understanding the mechanics that underlie behavioral change. Throughout her book, Pryor outlines a myriad of ways to reinforce habits that you have to increase the behaviors that you want to see in your partners, your children, and your coworkers, and how to limit those behaviors that you don't want to see more of. At this point in the work, say the mid-1980s or so, behavioral scientists were really starting to understand that there were some nasty side effects that come with using punishment as a training tool. Pryor says, while punishment or threat of it doesn't help the subject learn how to modify the behavior involved, what the subject does learn is to try not to get caught. Evasiveness increases rapidly under a punishment regimen. Also, repeated or severe punishment has some very nasty side effects: fear, anger, resentment, resistance, even hate in the punished one, and sometimes in the punisher too. These mental states are not conducive to learning unless you want the subject to learn fear, anger, and hatred. So if punishment isn't an ideal training tool, what can we do to stop an unwanted behavior? Pryor covers this too. She outlines 8 methods, 4 of which she calls the bad fairies, and 4 of which she calls the good fairies. We won't go over each in this video, but let's cover the first and the last methods here as an example. Method number 1, our first bad fairy, is to shoot the dog. You're about to understand the title of her book. Is your dog barking? Shoot it. Kids too noisy in the car? Make them walk home. Your spouse comes home in a bad mood? Divorce. This method is the nuclear option, to be sure. This method requires that you make sure that a behavior can't physically happen. A 0% chance. Problem solved. Well, you can't deny its effectiveness. But maybe there's a better way. Let's look at the last method, one of our good fairies. Change the motivation. In this method, you focus on why the behavior is happening and work on changing the motivation behind it. Change the motivation, change the behavior. Is your dog barking? Probably because it's lonely, frightened, or bored. Better give them some exercise, attention, or another dog to play with. Kids too noisy in the car? Could be from hunger or fatigue. Let's try some snacks and some pillows for a more comfortable ride home. Your spouse comes home in a bad mood? What about a job change? Go out for a walk together to relieve some stress. Maybe even give them a glass of wine or some fresh air. See if that helps. My big takeaway here from reading Don't Shoot the Dog is that Pryor's big overarching point is that although there are many methods to create behavior change, the most direct learning comes from reinforcement, while punishment is a pretty sloppy teacher with some pretty harmful side effects. As a trainer and a teacher, if we have the ability to be kinder to our students and to get the same, if not better results, then we have an obligation to take that route. Now you know where our name comes from too. The kind canine. Pretty neat, right? Skinner gave us operant conditioning. Pryor refined it to be even more practical for training and teaching in both humans and animals. Now let's take a look at how this affects purely human people. Finally, Eric, you're saying, I've been a human this whole time. Give me some techniques so that I can change my own behavior. Whoa, now settle down there. I get your point. And now we're going to do just that. Let's take a look at what Atomic Habits has to say. Atomic Habits by James Clear takes decades of scientific research distilled down into an easy to read and quite entertaining at times book. Published in 2018, Clear approaches human behavior and behavior change from its smallest possible parts to create meaningful habits in your life over time. Atomic here refers to atoms, like small, not explosive, like the atomic bomb. Clear borrows from the groundbreaking work of Skinner while adding in more modern research like has been done by B.J. Fogg and others. The interesting parallel here is that creating habits can be achieved by applying the concepts of behavioral psychology. Habits are only repeated behaviors after all. Clear's process for building a habit is straightforward, and it has only 4 steps: cue, craving, response, and reward. The cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. We give dogs cues all the time: sit, down, roll over. For humans, that cue might be a good smelling dinner that makes you hungry, or the flashing lights of a casino that lures you over to the slot machine. Cravings are the motivational force behind every habit. You or I may have a craving to satiate hunger, to relieve stress, or to empty your bladder. Dogs have the same cravings. I want to play, I want to eat, I want to go potty. Same kinds of things. Cravings here are biological in nature. Now we can get to the actual behavior, the response. This is what we do to satisfy the craving. I eat, I shop, I relieve myself, all in response to satisfy my craving. And finally, the reward. Sometimes the reward is accomplished by doing the behavior itself. I eat and I'm now satiated. Sometimes it's that praise that I get from doing a good job. Teaching a new behavior to a dog works the same way. If you are rewarded, that behavior gets stronger. Remember talking about reinforcement? And now we know that dogs enjoy many different types of reinforcement, like treats, fetch, tug, praise, and pets. Clear posits that if we can bring awareness to the habit creation process, we can get in there and change our habits around, increasing the likelihood that we'll create good habits and reducing the bad ones. In fact, that's all we're doing when we train our dogs. We become the guide to help our dogs increase their good behaviors and eliminate the bad ones. Good and bad behaviors are subject to human interpretation. There are not good and bad behaviors for dogs, only desirable and undesirable behaviors from the human perspective. As long as a dog is not actively harming themselves or others, then we should show compassion when a dog does an undesirable behavior and guide them to make a better choice. Rant over. The science and psychology behind creating meaningful behavior change is vast, and it has a long history, decades in the making. From Skinner to Pryor to Clear, behavior is a multifaceted discipline that has roots in our biological makeup, as well as the animals that we share this planet with. If we can better come to understand how to effectively and meaningfully change the behavior in our dogs and to support that behavior change amongst our friends and our family, I believe that we can make a significant impact on our lives and the lives of those around us. Until next time, be kind to your canine.
And I really hope you enjoyed learning about the 15 different types of dog whines. Bye for now.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you liked this video, give it a like and subscribe to our channel. We wanted to try out something a little bit different today, so give us a comment down below and let us know what you think. Before I go, there is one more thing that I wanted to make sure that you know. It's really a critical component to everything that we talked about today. When applying these behavior principles, it's really important to know before you do anything else, you have to make sure that you